It seems like it doesn't matter how many articles with actual calculations or videos we put out that show that leasing the car typically is not a sound financial decision. We still get tons of questions on how to calculate the car payment, or I'll get an email from somebody who is 23 years old, got their first job, and they're like, I've been dreaming about M3 since I was in high school. Like, what do you think I can do with payments? So you've been dreaming about driving this car for the whole 5 or 6 years, and I'm not gonna be the one to kill that dream. I decided I'm gonna do a series of videos that are very practical on leasing. So they're gonna be longer, and they're gonna be like really step by step. They're kind of tedious, but when you watch the videos, you will never get fooled by a lease offer, you'll never get confused, you'll understand exactly what they mean. So it will be spread out through the videos. I think total watch time is 1.5 hours or a little bit less. So the first video is going to be about how to calculate the lease payments, and we want to answer questions like, should I leave down payment? What are MSDs? Should I use them? Should I roll in all of the drive-off fees? The second video is going to be even more practical, because we're just going to go to websites and see those convoluted lease offers and try to bring them together to this common denominator, which we're going to use that 1% of MSRP rule. So again, very step by step, very practical. And then it's going to be a video 2B, sort of an appendix. And this is for especially people that never really shopped for the cars before, or don't understand how the pricing structure goes. We're going to take BMW 3 Series, Mercedes C-Class, and Audi A4, and then we're going to compare and see which one is actually the best leased car out of those three, because they're all in the same class. They cost very similar, so we'll see what's going on there. And the video number 3 is going to be about when you have all of your homework, when you have all of the data, and you have that limited time to act, because the deals are usually time sensitive, how to go about, how to email the dealership, how to negotiate. And there's going to be a partway, kind of 3B again, where we'll talk about lease takeovers, how they work, how to find a good deal, and how not to get screwed with some car when you're trying to return it. So those are the series, and I think that will cover like 99% of the topics that are related to lease. And if you watch all of them, you're never going to be confused. You'll know exactly where you stand and what's going on, what step are you at during the deal process. So let's jump right into it. So firstly, in very general terms, let's look how lease works in case you don't know it and all you know it's lower monthly payment than financing. So say, for example, the car costs $60,000 and you need it for 3 years. So the dealer tells you that in 3 years, their car will cost $30,000. That's its residual value. So if we subtract it, obviously we're going to get $30,000. So instead of paying for the full price of the car, you're going to pay for that $30,000. We divide it by 36 months and say add tax. That's the tax in Ontario. So you pay $941 per month and you get the car. The car doesn't belong to you. At the end of the lease, you bring the car back to the dealership. Alright, so even though the idea is pretty straightforward, in reality there are so many different fees and rebates and incentives, and dealerships looking at every corner to make up some money because they don't really make money on the new cars, that calculating an actual lease payment is way more complicated, and that's what I want to go through. So to do that, I opened a very popular calculator, Lease Hacker. That's the website where it gives you the calculator, and there's also forums where people actually get deals and they share those deals. So I actually opened up a real deal that somebody got for an Audi. I would like to go over each item in the calculator for you to understand what does it mean, what does it matter, and there are some items that require you to make a choice during the lease. So I want to give you all of the information and my opinion so you can make an educated choice and decide for yourself. And before we go through the calculator, there are kind of 3 questions I want you to keep in mind. Number 1 is, what happens if the car gets completely destroyed or stolen? What happens with your money? Number two, if you would like to get out of lease earlier by transferring to somebody, is that possible? And number three, when we go through calculations, it's very important to understand to what number the sales tax applies. Because, for example, here in Ontario, it's 13%, so it significantly changes your monthly payment depending on where does that 30% apply. All right, so first item is make, and this calculator actually pulls different incentives and different fees they know. So what you got to understand that each manufacturer has their own sales process and fees associated with that. So for example, for Audi, the acquisition fee, that's just to start your sort of like a credit process, is $895. But if we choose Bentley, it will be $995. So it is important to know what manufacturer you're going with and what kind of fees they have. The next item is the MSRP price, which is a sticker price or suggested manufacturer price. And on this calculator, your residual value that, like for example, here is 57%, will be calculated from this number. And the next line is the selling price. And obviously, even these days, nobody really pays usually the sticker price for the car, unless it's a unique car like Ford Raptor, where you might actually pay above MSRP. So what's very important about the selling price is to make sure that this number that you plug in is actually the selling price, that it doesn't include different incentives. Sometimes dealerships get creative on how they present the price. For example, last time I was buying the car, they told me the price of the car, which I thought was really good, but they already included the tax savings I got for my trade-in. So it's important to separate the selling price from the incentives, both to calculate the sales tax and to make sure that you're not counting the incentive twice, because if this price already includes incentives, you don't need to enter them here. All right, so let's move to the next section. Let's call here lease numbers. And the first item is month. That's for how long are you taking the car. Now, if you were financing the car, obviously, the longer you finance it for, the way lower is your monthly payment, because you're taking the same amount of money and break it down into more months. What you're going to be aware with lease is if you're leasing for a longer term, then the residual value is going to go down, which means that you're actually financing a higher amount of money. So that pushes the monthly price up. So the relationship between the months and the monthly payment is not as direct as compared to financing. Next thing is miles per year. So that is how many miles you're planning to drive the car per year. And obviously, again, if you have lower miles, then the residual value goes up, which means your monthly payment is lower. If you're driving higher miles, the residual value goes down, so your monthly payment goes up. And you can get a low monthly deal because you're saying to them, oh, I'm only going to do 7,500 miles per year. But each mile you go over that limit will cost you money at the end of the lease. So the next item is residual value, and it's a key data point because all of the calculation is really based off that number, because you're going to be financing the remaining amount. So you have to take your time to properly research it. Usually it's not readily available on the manufacturer's website. So forums like Lease Hacker or Edmunds are good places to see what people got, what kind of residual value. What you got to make sure is when you're comparing the residual value on forums that your months and miles or kilometers are exact same. Because obviously if I'm going to put 15,000, this residual value is going to go down because you're going to be driving more, as we just talked. So the next item is money factor, which is kind of a confusing term if you see it for the first time. And it's a convoluted way of expressing the interest rate. And what you do is you take the money factor and multiply it by 2,400 and you get the APR, which is way easier to understand. Obviously, the higher the APR is, the more you pay in the interest cost, the more your monthly payment is. And this is a place where dealers tend to make money by upselling other credits they have. So that's very important to watch when you make the lease deal. Next item is multiple security deposit, MSD for short. And the first time I looked at it, it kind of confused me. I didn't know what they are. And they all depend on the manufacturer. And that's why this calculator is good, because it plugs the numbers. They know them. And I'll just put it at 10 to make it more extreme. So what they are refundable deposits that you will get back at the end of the lease. So that's not a down payment, and the benefit to you is your APR gets reduced. So for example, here the APR was 4.15, but if you add those refundable deposit, the APR goes to 2.95. So you're saving 1.2%. And you would have to put $5,750 for that. I don't want to say down, because that's not the same. That's a refundable deposit. So now when you think about it, let's go back to our 3 questions. What happens if the car gets completely totaled or stolen? Even if you have a gap insurance, will you get this deposit back? And that depends on the manufacturer, but every single one I looked at, the answer is no. You're not going to get it back. At the same time, second question, if you ever want to transfer your lease, will somebody pay you $5,750 to take over the lease because you did those security deposit? Most likely no. And finally, as a good investor that really understands the interest rates and how to calculate them, and if you don't, our channel will be a good place to subscribe. You can see you're saving 1.2% by putting this money to the dealership, but you could have easily taken that money, and right now, for example, in Tangerine savings account, I'm getting 2%, so you will actually make 0.8% more. Or you could put it in stock market ETF, and even with the volatile economy we have, you'll probably get 5 to 6%. So the risk is just not worth the reward here at all. You're not really winning anything. You're saving a little bit on the APR, but you could make more money with this sum if you have it. So my opinion is to go with 0 MSDs. Okay, moving on to cap cost adjustment, which is capital cost adjustment, and I'm gonna click this for a second. So there is an option to give a down payment. Right now, this guy got $478, and obviously if you put down payment, and I'll put extreme one, $10,000, it goes way down to $44 because you're financing a lesser amount, and perhaps psychologically you like that lower monthly payment. However, again, let's think about the 3 questions. What happens if the car gets destroyed? Will you get this $10,000 back? No, you won't, even if you have gap insurance. If you want to transfer the lease to somebody, will they pay you the $10,000? No, most definitely they won't. Actually, on the flip side, if you're looking to take over lease transfer, this could be a good idea to find some poor soul that did give some down payment, which you actually benefit from. I'm gonna have a video, like a separate video about lease takeovers and how to find a great deal and how the process works. So if you're considering that, you consider subscribing to the channel and click on that bell notification button. So again, with down payment, really, like, there is no benefit except saving a little bit on the interest cost. But as we talked about, that, like here, the APR is 4.15%. But in a lot of cases, depending on your car, it's like 2% and 2.5%. So if you have that money, you're better off investing it somewhere and making sure you don't lose that money in case something happens with the car. Okay, so we'll do down payment 0 because, again, instead, except the psychological effect of lower monthly payment, there's really risk and reward is not there. And now we're going to tax incentives, and this can be a bit complicated but very important to understand. So for example, this guy got $9,500 in taxed incentives, and what it means is, and they give you some example like cash back or rebates or loyalty cash. That's when you're leasing from the same manufacturer you already have. So he got $9,500. So you might say, well, the sales price was $64,000, but really I should subtract that. But because it's a tax incentive, the sales tax will apply to this whole number despite you getting the cash back or loyalty cash. And for example, again, in my case, in Ontario, 13% on top of this whole number, that's significant. So really, you got to reduce that incentive by the tax. Now, there's a second type of incentives like manufacturer rebates or dealer rebates or whatever discounts they are. And those actually reduce this price, the selling price. So not only you're getting the rebate, but you're actually paying lower sales tax. And that's exactly the reason why in the selling price, we want to make sure we don't put any incentives to make sure we break them down here. And when you negotiate with a dealer, you really gotta make sure that you understand the difference between the two and what goes where, because your sales price will decrease or increase depending on how the sales tax is applied. So finally, they have the zero drive off button here, which I would actually put over here because there's also fees, taxes, and rebates that you can't really avoid. But if you click on that, basically all of those things will get rolled over into your monthly payment. So if I click it, it's $478, but if we go to the fees, it's $567. So moving on to fees, taxes, and rebates, the first one is acquisition fee, and this calculator actually pulls it based on the brand. And you really cannot go around not paying this fee. But what you should be aware is that when you see an ad like 0% down, 300 per week or something like that, there are still drive away fees that you have to pay, which is cash out of pocket. So that's the acquisition fee. Dealer fee is if you, like, they usually add some BS like document fee or admin fee. And this thing you can actually negotiate because like back in the day it was like admin fee $600, like photocopy fee $85, which obviously you don't need to pay $85 for a paper. And then if you buy some sort of like excessive wear and tear insurance or any upgrades, you can add them here. Then there is government fees, which is like registration. Usually they're untaxed. And there is a sales tax, wherever that guy is like 9.25%, which is better than 13, but it could be lower too. Finally, they have a nice option here to change how the sales tax is applied, and it differs by state or the province. Most like normal states and provinces have just added to your monthly lease payment. Ontario is the same way, thank God. Something like somebody like Texas has like a crazy scale. So before you calculate, do your research to see how it works. And finally, they have post-sale rebates. That's like a check you would get after the sale. Obviously, if you watched this video so far, you know it's not going to reduce the sales price. So that won't affect the sale tax. Now let's look at the results. So you get your monthly payment pre-tax, which is obvious. Then with tax, and you just add the 9.25%. The drive-off fees are $0 because we have this clicked off. If I unclick it, the drive-off fees are $2,055. And here you can ask the question, is it worth it to do it? And in my opinion, yes, because you're not putting anything out of pocket. The downside to you is you have a slightly higher monthly payment and increased interest costs. But again, in this case, if the car gets totaled, it gets stolen, nothing out of your pocket, you're not risking anything. So I think in this case, incurring a little bit of extra interest cost is worth the reward of not putting anything out of pocket. So even if I had $2,055, I'd rather invest it in a stock market or even savings account rather than paying it to the dealership. So if you have an option of zero drive off, I would suggest you use it. Then there is a disposition fee. This is what you need to pay when you return the car. So put it in your spreadsheet when you do the calculation. Post-sale rebate, that's the cash you will get, and again, it won't affect the sales tax. Total lease cost, what they do is they multiply the pre-tax monthly payment by 24 months, whatever your term is. So basically, that's what you're gonna pay in 2 years, and this money goes nowhere because you don't own the car and you return it. Of course, if you would have bought the car, your car would have depreciated anyway. So perhaps if in 2 years the car depreciates more than this, the lease is actually a better deal. And there is a lease hacker score, which is their algorithm to give you a score on how good your lease deal is. Okay, so now you know how to use this calculator, and it's kind of obvious that before you even approach the calculator, you have to spend time to make a research to find the most accurate numbers possible, because if you're just plugging in crappy numbers, you're gonna get crappy result that has nothing to do with the real payment. Now, when you're trying to come up with the monthly payments and you're trying to figure out if it's competitive, there's a rule of 1% in the lease hacker community. And the rule is if you can pay 1% per month of MSRP price, that's a good deal. So it's a little benchmark for you. And this is it for the video about how to calculate the lease car payment and what all the terms mean. On the next video, I want to talk about what are the best cars to lease, like the cars with high residual value, how to find the best deal, and finally, like how to negotiate with that. So stay tuned if you want to lease the car. Wait for the second video, subscribe, and take your time researching and getting your numbers right. Thank you for watching. Until the next time.